How you doing, boys and girls? It's Zach, and I'm back with another quick, cheap deck tech. This one I threw together with some vampires that I had laying around, so it became a awesome little tribal deck, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So we went ahead and went with Sauron, Vengeful, Bloodlord. The reason being is he's a vampire, and other than that, he has a static ability that gives our creatures and planeswalkers lifelink as long as it's our turn. His +2 ability is great. It's going to ping our opponents or planeswalker for 1 damage. The planeswalker being a key part in this format. You'll be able to keep some of your opponents' Oathbreakers at bay, or at least prevent them from getting to their ultimate a little bit. The -X is going to help us keep our creatures coming, so we're going to be able to pump some of his loyalty counters into returning creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield. We're going to go ahead with damnable pact for this, because the loss of life is going to hardly be felt in our deck, considering all the life link that we have. So we have no problem paying, upwards of 5 or 6 life in order to draw 5 or 6 cards at a turn. We have Duskborn Sky Marcher. It's going to be a great early game 1/1. It's also going to be able to tap for 1 white, and it will be able to help pump one of our attacking vampires until end of turn. Vicious Conquistador is great. He's a 1/2, 1-drop. Whenever he attacks, each opponent is going to lose 1 life, so that's going to keep our game plan going and hopefully keep the pressure on our opponents and keep the game in our favor. I have Sky Marcher's Aspirin in here. It's a great 1-drop for 2/1, so it's going to trade with a lot of great creatures, especially some aggro creatures that your opponents might be playing. And once it has reached Ascend, which is once we have 10 or more permanents on the battlefield, then we will go ahead and it will have flying, and it'll be an even better threat. We have Legion's Lieutenant in here because why not? It's going to pump all of our vampires. Most of my cards, as you noticed, are standard legal or were standard legal, so I know there's probably some other vampires that could be adding to this, but this one is going to definitely help us out, and it's a great way to keep this deck pretty cheap. Dusk Legion Zealot is going to go ahead and help us with card draw, and it's going to also ping us for 1 life, which will come in handy in certain aspects, as you will soon see. Paladin of Atonement being one of those. Whenever we lose life each turn, it's going to get a 1/1 counter, and whenever he dies, he's going to gain us life equal to his toughness. After that, we have what used to be the darling of the standard meta at my LGS during the Kaladesh block. This guy was everywhere, and of course, I'm going to throw him in here. He's a Aetherborn Vampire, 2/3, with Death Touch and Lifelink. He's going to keep a lot of our guys, a lot of our opponents' bigger creatures at bay. And when we do have to finally throw him under the bus, he will be able to gain us a little bit of life doing it. Oathborn Vampire is in here. Oathsworn Vampire is in here. He comes into the battlefield tapped, but whenever we gain life, we are able to bring him back from the graveyard. So this will be a sacrificial piece to our vampire tribal here. For cards exactly like this. Cruel Celebrant. Whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker we control dies, each opponent's going to lose a life and we gain a life. So every time that we go ahead and kill off our Oathsworn Vampire here, we're going to gain 1 life, and we're going to ping our opponents, and then when we gain the life, we can also bring him back to the battlefield. Pitiless Pontiff is a great piece here. It's going to be a 2/2. We can also we can also spend 1 mana and sacrifice another creature to give him Death Touch and Indestructible. So whenever we have a tough creature to deal with that either swings or blocks on our opponent's side, we can go ahead and sacrifice one of our other creatures like the Oathsworn Vampire and go ahead and give this guy Death Touch and Indestructible to keep him on the field and also keep our opponents at bay. We've got Mavren Fane, Dusk Apostle. Mavren Fane, I'm sorry, I am butchering these names here. Mavren Fane, Dusk Apostle. This guy is going to be a key producer of 1/1 vampire tokens with lifelink. Every time that we play a vampire in our deck, As you can see, it has many. We will be gaining a white vampire creature token with lifelink that will help our cause. Sadistic Sky Marchers in here. We can go ahead and throw this in here. It's a flying threat, which really helps with the lifelink, especially on turn 3. There's not a whole lot that a lot of our opponents will have as far as flying threats themselves, or threats with reach. So a lot of times this guy can get in there for a good 2 to 3 hits, gaining us anywhere from 4 to 6 life. So he's going to be a key engine and really good in the early game. Izzarith the Awakener. She is not a vampire, but I do have her in here because she is a 3/3 body with Death Touch, which is very intimidating and keeps our opponents bigger baddies away from us for a little while. But her ability is what I'm mainly interested in. Whenever she attacks, we may pay X, and whenever we do, we can return a creature card with converted mana cost X from our graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it. And then if that creature would die, it would be exiled instead of putting it anywhere else. So any of our key vampire pieces that end up dying, Izzarith will be able to help us put them back onto the battlefield. Vampire Envoy is in here. It has flying. It's a 1/4, and whenever Vampire Envoy becomes tapped, we gain a life. So it's going to help with our life gain cycle. We have the Blood Mist Infiltrator. This guy is going to be pretty good. He gets in for 3 damage whenever we manage to sacrifice another creature whenever he attacks. So either one of our 1/1s or maybe some of the Oathsworn Vampire. So we can go ahead and sacrifice those guys to make sure that we hit our opponents for a guaranteed 3. Alinda the Dusk Rose. I've been looking and searching for ways to use this card since I got her, and this format seems the perfect way to utilize her. So she is a 1/1 with lifelink. However, whenever another creature dies, that's any creature, not only ours, so any creature our opponents may have that die, whenever they die, they're going to put a 1/1 counter on Alinda. And whenever Alinda dies, we're going to create X 1/1 vampires with lifelink, where X is her power. So we do have a lot of removal in this deck, so we will be able to go ahead and pump her up. Not to mention we're going to be sacrificing some of our own guys, which will also help with the ticking her up ability as well. Driver of the Dead. We have Driver of the Dead in here to help us return certain pieces. Whenever this guy dies, we can return a creature card from our graveyard with converted mana cost 2 or less from the graveyard to our battlefield. Sanctum Seeker is going to be one of our win cons. This guy has been great in every vampire tribal deck I have ever put together. Whenever a vampire we control attacks, we will ping our opponent for 1 life, and we gain 1 life. So that's each opponent. So whenever we have, say we swing with 5 vampires, we're going to go ahead and ping each opponent for 5 life and gain 5 life doing that. So this can often end the game pretty easily. Vindictive Vampire is another reward engine for helping to sacrifice some of our pieces. Whenever another creature we control dies, Vindictive Vampire is going to ping our opponents, each of our opponents, for 1 damage, and we're going to gain a life. Epicure of Blood is going to be a very dangerous piece for 5 mana. It is a 4/4. Whenever we gain life, our opponents are each going to lose a life. And as you've seen so far, we have plenty of ways to gain life, so we will be putting the pressure on our opponents quickly. So expect this guy to be removed ASAP, but can get a lot of value out of him before he's removed. Next we have Bishop of Rebirth. This is going to be a great piece. It's 3/4, and whenever she attacks, we can return a target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard to our battlefield. So a lot of our key pieces there, the Oathsworn Vampire, are Legion's Lieutenant, the Maverin Fane. So a lot of key pieces will be able to keep coming back with this chick. Lastly, we got Vona, Butcher of Magan. Vona is awesome. She's a 4/4 with lifelink, so she's going to be gaining us gobs of life, but her ability to pay 7 life and destroy target non-land permanent is going to be a key piece. So any tricky permanents that we have been having trouble with on the battlefield, we can always just go ahead and use our life as a way of destroying some of those. I don't have Legion's Landing in here yet. I will be acquiring it soon, but until then, I threw in a copy of Queen's Commission to help give us some white vampire creature tokens. I also have Call to the Feast to do the same thing, but in a larger quantity. And these will come in handy with some of the pieces that you will soon see. We have Argyl's Bloodfast, so this is a way to help ping us for 2 life, which helps with the Paladin of Atonement, and it draws us a card, and if we ever get into a pinch and we have 5 life or less, we can go ahead and transform it, but we will very rarely be doing that. I threw, of course, Radiance Destiny in here because we are a tribal deck, so it doesn't hurt to pump our entire board state by throwing this in here. You name vampires, and then every vampire that comes out is going to be buffed up a little bit. Anointed Procession is going to be key for pieces like Alinda, Mavrin Fane, and other cards like Queen's Commission. So whenever we have this out on the battlefield, we'll be able to double the amount of tokens that we produce from it, which is going to come in handy once I finally get a Legion's Landing. Alright, so here's our removal package. I went with Fatal Push. It's going to destroy target creature if its converted mana cost is 2 or less, or if something died this turn, it'll do it with converted mana cost 4 or less. So we have plenty of means of triggering the revolt to make sure that we get some of these larger creatures off the battlefield. Final payment is excellent in this build. We can pay the 5 life, or we can decide to sacrifice a creature or an enchantment to destroy target creature, so it can enable our aristocrats style sacrifice engine, or just because we're gaining a butt ton of life, we can go ahead and pay 5 life and go ahead and get that creature off the board. D-Spark is in here because there's a lot of tricky stuff that some of the people at my LGS play, including Indestructibles. So in order to get rid of some of those Indestructibles, I've thrown a copy of D-Spark in there. Mortify is in there because this format, much like Commander, has a lot of real tricky enchantments. Trying not to obscure the writing there. But this will be able to destroy target creature or target artifact, which comes in handy. Invoke the Divine, since we are running colors that do not have a whole lot in the way of artifact and enchantment removal. This is going to be a very key piece for any tricky artifacts or our enchantments that we may have to get rid of. And it also helps our engine by gaining us 4 life. Kaya's Wrath is good. It's going to help destroy all creatures on the board. So if your opponents are playing wide strategies, like one of the guys at my LGS plays an elf ball deck that just gets out of control with a million elves, this will help to keep those kind of decks in check. And if you do have to throw some of your creatures under the bus, which we don't mind doing in this deck, it'll gain us some life doing it. So I've got Revival and Revenge in here. The Revival part is to help us get some of our creatures back from the graveyard with converted mana cost 3 or less. So those Mavrin Fanes and the Vampire Lords we can help get back. And the Revenge part is going to help double our life total, and target opponent loses half of their life. So if we have another deck that we're playing against that has some crazy life gain strategies, this will help keep them in check. We've got Recover in here as a way to help draw cards and return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. We've got Sanguine Sacrament. Sanguine Sacrament is in here to help us also gain twice X life. And since its ability doesn't get it thrown into the graveyard, we can end up using it over and over again should we miraculously be able to draw it again. And then finally I have Finale of Eternity. Destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness X or less, and if X is 10 or more, we can return all the creatures from our graveyard to our battlefield. So I doubt we'll ever get to that point. And then as far as the land base, I do not have any tricky lands yet. I'm going to be looking up some better lands to be throwing in this deck. I will hopefully maybe be doing a follow-up to this, and I'll just do a proper video for this thing and throw in some upgrade pieces. But I have Isolated Chapel in there, various swamps and plains. I threw in a Ghost Quarter to help deal with some of our opponent's trickier non-basic lands, so we can get those off of the battlefield as well. And I think aside from Godless Shrine in here and a Memorial to Folly to help get us some stuff back, one of our creatures, it's basically just all basic lands for now. But like I said, I will be upgrading it eventually. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little deck tech. This is the first time I've tried doing a deck tech this way, so hope I didn't stumble and stutter too bad for you guys. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you like, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. And it'll help my channel a lot, and I can bring you a lot more deck techs. Alright guys, until next time, enjoy.